website. We had looked at having it in the conference room just for the ambiance, the comfort of a little different table, all being around, a little easier to see around the dais. You all were invited. We'd made sure the library board was invited, but some folks have expressed concern about it not being done on camera, and so that's why we're going to stay here tonight. But I've had some requests from commissioners that we take a 5-minute break. So I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Urban Renewal meeting.
All righty, been moved by Commissioner Hensley, seconded by Commissioner Iden. All those in favor say aye, and you may stand up. See you in 5 minutes for the work session. 3, 2. Back, Canby, to the Urban Renewal Agency's work session. We're going to call it to order now. Our city recorder has asked me to read our work session policy statement, which is as follows. Work sessions are designed to give the Canby Urban Renewal Agency the opportunity to hear information and ask questions related to future agency business. This information is preliminary in nature and often complex and detailed in content. Professional or contract staff is sometimes scheduled for presentations. To make the most of the short time we are given for these meetings and to keep professional or contract staff costs to a minimum, the agency has a policy that public audience comment will not be taken at work session meetings. This is appropriate under Oregon Public Meetings Law. Instead, we invite public comment at all of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency special meetings under the section dedicated on each agenda for public comment. In addition, we invite the public to contact any of the agency members, myself, or city staff with comments or concerns. Although this is a public meeting, the Canby Urban Renewal Agency cannot make any formal decisions in a work session. Next step actions are often determined for deliberation and discussion at future Urban Renewal Agency special meetings. Our administrator and our recorder do, however, say that we can, by consensus, give staff direction for further exploration and information. Right. Fair statement?
Yep.
All righty. All righty, agency. We're here tonight because we received some disappointing news just around the Christmas break, in that the property that is adjacent immediately to the east of our existing library will not be available for purchase at this time. The owners originally were very interested, had expressed that to us, but on further examination of their own goals and such, have decided to withdraw that.
That's correct.
Fair assessment?
Yes.
All righty. So our purpose tonight is to discuss next steps, talk about some options that we have. A number of you have talked to me about some ideas you would like to share. I know our Urban Renewal Administrator has an option to bring, and our Vice Chair has one he'd like to discuss tonight. So just like any other work session, please, free-flowing discussion, pretend we're around the square table. Instead, we do have a whiteboard. I don't know, I guess we do have a camera for it. But think work session in the conference room, and except for the trains. The trains are a little louder here. All righty. With that, let's start out with Vice Chair Hodgson's.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I'm going to quickly sketch what I think might be an option. You all might want to move that direction because I can't move the whiteboard, sorry.
Yeah, feel free to rearrange the chairs tonight so you can see the whiteboard.
Oh, thanks, Greg. Dictionary.
Charades.
It sounds like.
Yeah, audience, feel free to rearrange, move around, move chairs so you can see.
Already there's chuckling at my drawings.
Yeah, we won't be asking you to be on the Arts Association Alliance Committee there.
That's okay. My wife is much better suited for it than I.
Maybe you should have brought her to draw the picture.
I should have. So, I'm not sure how not to block anybody, so.
That's fine.
So, my very archaic drawing, I apologize, I did not take art in school. The ideas of revisiting perhaps of a hybrid idea that Councilor or Commissioner Parker had shared at a previous conversation was taking a look at the property right across the street from the library. So it's the corner of 2nd and Holly. It would be the property that is the small white house across the street from the library. Sorry, 3rd and Holly, right there. So the little white house and then the larger white house around the corner across from the park. As we looked at it, the single footprint itself is only 13,000 square feet, give or take 100 or so square feet. That obviously would not meet long-term requirements, would not be able to bring us to the point of consolidating city departments and buildings and putting the library all together in a single building. So that's where Councilor Roach has suggested, well, why don't we just look at possibly going even up more than one, an additional floor, so instead of 2 floors, go all the way up and build out to a maximum of 3 floors. To meet the landscaping requirement, so this would be if we build it out edge to edge, so we're looking at 13,000 square feet per floor. To meet the landscaping requirement, we need to shrink possibly the first floor to 12,000 square feet to allow for the landscaping requirement to be met. So the funky lines. So one idea was to bring in the bottom, so that this is the park side here, the alleyway behind where the building is, what I'm suggesting. So this would be a landscaping area, so it could be an atrium entryway point for the library, so that's the blue. The other alternative was to do it on the back side. That would allow, where the dotted line is, for the drive up for the book drop still. So we'd still be able to utilize the alley and the drive up, because that was a big thing that I had heard was that, and my wife reminded me again tonight to make sure that I don't not include that, because she loves that feature, and I know a lot of the library staff and users like that as well. So then the 2 subsequent floors would then create a little bit of an overhang over those parts. So we would still be able to meet landscaping and then expand upward. The other piece we talked about trying to meet is basement for record storage keeping, possibly 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. If I remember my math, that would give us 41,000 square feet of building space. So library would still maintain the first floor. Now, where it becomes a bit of a, we veer away from a single floor entirely for the library. We then have to kind of talk about how do we utilize and maximize the second floor. And that's not my forte. In terms of, what space, what could be used on the second floor. Is that shared meeting spaces? Do we do an open atrium with stuff around it? I don't know. That's not, like I said, that's not my strength. But then we would have city staff on the top, which 13,000 square feet would, I think, adequately cover what we need staff-wise, a room for staff, maybe some smaller conference rooms up here. So one thing, talking with Commissioner Rocha, was so right now we're looking at it being $250 a square foot. If we can get that to 200, this becomes an $8.2 million project. We don't have to move the library. We don't have to demo the old library. Everybody can stay put on city staff until it is built. That alone saves us almost $500,000, which can then go into land purchase with landowners there. Or back, we'll have to, it would get absorbed obviously into part of the project. A couple of challenges that I see still to talk about, if this is an option, is how do we manage 2 floors? And in that way, I know that was a thing that we heard a number of times when we were talking about this option over here. How do we do that from a safety standpoint, manpower, operating costs? Because again, one of the things to me, for my criteria, is lessening our footprint and cutting costs. Does that drive up cost? Can that be made up by consolidating services? That's our lovely finance director's job to tell me that aspect. It keeps it by the park. We're not moving anybody. Split level. There is a power pole right now, and I know that was a big conversation piece when we were talking about Third Avenue and what would that mean to try to underground it, move it, how do we do that? And then currently, there's a wonderful, huge tree right there. And I don't know what kind of groundswell and support losing that tree would have, but those are, knowing the reaction we've had about trees in our community, I felt it appropriate to include that as a potential, I don't want to say hazard, but a conversation piece going forward. So, trying to think if I'm leaving anything out on this piece here. So, questions, comments?
Todd, in this type of construction, would it be possible to do an atrium in the center?
Sure, you lose space though.
You do sacrifice square footage. I'm just wondering about, can you do some sort of skylight or atrium all the way up, or?
In the center, sure you could. You just, again, you're gonna lose square footage, and that's what we're trying to gain. But yeah, I mean, of course you can.
Okay. There's not a technical reason why you can't, okay.
Put that tree in there.
Okay, peanut gallery.
Just ask away.
Mr. Chair, I was going to say, so we don't interrupt the mayor's drawing, is there any way we could get some paper out on the wings? Because I'd like to share another idea,
We will.
but I don't want to interrupt his drawing.
You can feel free to interrupt that drawing when it comes time.
We can capture it.
Please.
Take a
You
picture
can take
of
a
that
picture
drawing.
with your giant phablet then. Okay. Very good, very interesting. Other questions, discussion?
Now, on the square footage that we were looking at in the three-phase on Third Avenue, for the library, we were looking at 22,000 to 24,000 square feet. And so in this one here, we're going to have 25,000 square feet, so we're well within that.
Right.
We'd planned there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we do have to wrestle with the second floor
Right.
issue for operations and moving staff around.
Plus, we're looking at an elevator in this one.
Yeah,
We will have to have an
Yeah.
elevator.
The other point too, with not having to necessarily tear down the library piece, is possibly retaining that building for either, we talked about during the agency meeting, leasing it out to a business, turn it into an incubator. I know Commissioner Coleman has shared the idea of leasing it, turning it into executive suites for, independent business professionals, or that way also the city can retain that building for down the road if the 13,000 square feet at the top for city, we grow out of that space, and that, who's to say, is that 10 years, 20 years down the road, but then we can at least peel off a department into the library, the current library building, if it's still available, still in that spot, and that way we're still keeping city services, we're moving out, but we're at least keeping them close proximity, if that comes to that down the road.
Yeah, Clint, you shared some numbers with me.
Well, I was just using a conservative number that if the current library is 11,000 square feet, and if, let's say, you had executive space and you had some shared conference room space, and at a very modest $14 a foot, and let's say you only had 10,000 workable space, that's generating a pretty good number that could help support the cost of maintaining the library in the future. In fact, if you threw a number at the old library and said, let's say the building's worth $1 million, if that library, as a rentable vehicle, can generate over $100,000 in income, you'd have a hard time finding an investment to do that. And it's paid for, and it could help support this endeavor. And so I think it would be a case where you couldn't afford to sell it,
Yes, indeed.
assuming you didn't, disrupt it.
Right.
Yeah, it's intriguing. Council would have to talk about being landlords,
Yeah.
whether we want to, but
And the reason I
pretty
like
intriguing
that,
idea.
I'm sorry to interrupt, is when you think about office space and you think about the big Class A office buildings, more and more of them are going to executive space because I know myself as an advisor or an attorney or CPA, in many cases, they don't need a huge office and they can share a conference room and everything. You don't have a big box computer on your desk anymore, and everything seems a lot more mobile. And so, and also the appeal of a shorter term lease is appealing too. But, thank you for your
Good
ideas.
idea. Yeah.
This is what happens at 2 AM.
Yeah.
Can I share a slide here?
I think they're giving you some paper.
Oh, cool.
Oh, thanks, Renata.
Sleep.
What's that?
No need for sleep.
It's sometimes overrated.
Yeah.
It's over.
Sleep when you're
You
dead.
sleep when we're dead.
Greg, some time ago, we'd talked about the possibility of could you turn that segment of Third Avenue into a plaza? Close it to traffic? Vacating the traffic, is that the word? And turning that into more of a block, right, between the park and the Andrus building and this property?
That could eliminate your landscaping problem. That could eliminate your landscaping problem. What we might want to do if we wanted to check that out is to lay down a traffic strip for a couple of months and just see how many cars we'd be disrupting. There isn't parking between those two, so, yeah, I mentioned that a couple.
Yeah, it's Greg's idea. I don't know how the tenants of the Andrus building would feel.
One of the things they were concerned about when they came in there, they talked to me about the parking, and they were concerned that, they had heard a rumor we're going to put parking meters on the street, so.
Oh,
Parking
I
meters
said,
and trees.
absolutely we are
Yeah.
not.
tell
So-
them that, so then they'll calm down when we
Yeah.
tell them the real deal, right?
So they do have parking around back, but it's not enough, I don't think, for all the employees that are there. But there isn't there parking in front of the building? Yeah.
Yes, and it's
So,
usually full.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there is parking, so,
That's intriguing that it could meet the landscape requirement.
yeah. that's-
Get us some square footage, man.
Yeah.
What?
Is it okay to draw?
Yeah, ready.
Giddy. Thank you for the paper. Okay, let me do a little drawing here.
He's got lines, that's not fair.
Yeah, he's got grids.
Okay, thanks for your patience. All righty. Well, let's see, under my proposed idea, the library would stay right where they are at the moment. And I consider one of the real gems of the downtown this neat little city hall. And in talking to Greg, I think he said there's about 3,000 usable square feet in that city hall. And so what my idea would be to scrape the police station and actually have a two-story, it could be three, but a two-story building that nudges up to the back of the city hall, and it takes over the whole police station. So it has an entry door here at the corner, and it has an entry door here on Second, And you'd build out basically a 19,000 square foot library with basement. But the beauty of this is the city would be upstairs when you're completed. But because in a library, as I understand it, you need a lot of meeting space for your programs and different things. And of course, the city needs meeting space too. And so, under my idea, you put a lot of that meeting space on the second floor that the city and the library could share. And you make this entrance, you could go into the library either way. And then you have a secure entry to the city, and then you have an elevator in here where you can go up. And you could also, since you're going to be digging up this police station, you could have a basement there for storage. But the way I would attack this is I'd leave the library where they are. As soon as this was complete, I would shift the library over into their space. I would lease this out as executive office space. I would, the council chambers would get disrupted in this scenario because this would not be here. And the thing of it is that on this block, the only real taxpayer on this block is Oliver Insurance, and they occupy only about 3,000 square feet. And so, under this example, we'd only be using about a third of this block. And so, I'm a big fan of once this is complete, then you are able to free up the finance building, the planning building, and I help Cubs' dream come true, and if necessary, buy them and move them but be working with them very nicely. And so this would all get developed in the future, and I would do a study to see if it made sense. It's more cost effective to go underground with parking or possibly have some parking on the roof, but with raised sides so you don't see it on the new construction. And I think the park location across here, I think that's a beautiful location. One of the things I am not crazy about is I think the parking there is just, it would be really tough in my opinion. And the nice thing about this idea is the library can stay where they are. Nobody has to really move. And you're reducing the city's footprint a great deal on this block. And then I would do a public-private investment. And so thanks for letting me share, folks.
Thanks.
Just the one, Clint?
That's it.
Oh.
What do you mean?
Well, no, I'm not insinuating anything.
Let's see if I missed anything.
I thought you had a couple of
I have a
ideas.
10-point plan here. Keep library where they are during construction. Build a 2-story library civic building in first and second. Remodel the city hall. Demo the old PD and council chambers. Move the library into the new location, approximately 19 to 20,000 feet. Remodel the old library. Rent out as executive office space. Move city into the second floor. City and library would have shared meeting space on the second floor. Seek private development of the other buildings on first and second. Let's see, consider any new construction to have parking on the roof of second or third floor with raised sides. Buy Cup building, help them achieve their dream to move. Consider purchase of Andrus building in the future for parking on third. And continue the progress in the downtown. And when you're all done, I'd have a big park.
Clint, what's the proposal for the existing city hall? What's that gonna be turned into, or?
Well, this building here, this new building, would basically be 19 to 20,000 on each floor. And obviously, I'd like to have a chamber and a visitor section, visitor center down here. But the city could still occupy a good deal of that, because maybe in the construction of this, you maybe wouldn't have you'd have the money to finish the library, but you may not have the money to completely finish the second floor. So you might not bring in the chamber or the visitor center if they're interested until you have.
Okay, what about what about the council chambers? Where are we gonna put that?
Well, because when you build out the library, you'd be building some shared conference space. And so I had incorporated the idea of where the council could meet potentially is on the wing that's next to the city hall when you do your remodel. or possibly upstairs.
That's good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good questions.
Take another picture.
I'm emailing them this week. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
You bet.
Behind door number 3.
Scribble in here. Other questions on it?
No, the only comment, I like it. The only comment you were asking about parking below or above is way too expensive. You'd never go make it in budget.
Maybe not on that project, but I was thinking on future projects on the block.
I mean, even going underneath, the structure needed to support 2 floors would be huge, and even more if you went up on the 3rd floor. Above the 2nd floor would be massive. It'd be really expensive.
Okay.
But the main building itself, though, that works.
Now, are we going to be able to, they talk mainly about wanting to have a drop-off, book drop-off, so are they going to be able to access this from Second Avenue and come down
Oh, good
through this
point.
and do that? And then, are they going to have parking any of this area in here, or?
I
Drop off is-
hadn't considered that yet.
And that may be one of those design pieces that, again, that's not, I don't know how, that's, if that's your forte, Clint, like it's not mine, but, you know, that may be a design piece that can get factored in.
The reason I kind of put it that way was, I thought, you know, in the original Second Avenue library plan, obviously it was a one-story, and I realized we want to maximize efficiency and by adding the 2nd floor. And so I was just thinking about it, would turning the project this way create a smaller footprint on the whole block than having it the original way as a 2-story? And the reason I did this was I felt it did keep the footprint smaller, and I felt that it also addressed the old ailing police station that could have new life.
You do demo the old one, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we do have to, you know, think about the delivery of the books by the different outlying libraries that share, and then we've got to have access by the people that like to drive up and drop them off, and the librarians like to have that access so they can pick those books up from inside. And if you look right now, if it's going to be on the back side here, there's no drive-through to First Avenue.
In order to make my idea work, you'd very likely have to buy cup to make it work very well. And I don't know if that's possible, but I just would say to make that idea work, that's what you would need to do. And based on that idea, I would scrape all the buildings except the Oliver Insurance. And I might even, you know, ask, they might be a better candidate for that property across from the park than we would be. But the other thing I might ask them is if, you know, if they want to stay on the block and if they're interested in some public-private development that might involve getting a better return on their investment by putting a little more money into their building.
Okay. Other questions? Comments? Okay. Greg?
Yeah.
You have an option you'd like to present tonight.
Do, I'm going
It's
to do you a
pretty hot off
favor
the press.
and not even attempt to put anything on paper.
Oh, I think you should talk.
We like your drawings.
My aesthetic challenge transfers to the inability to put lines on paper. So, but I do have another option that was just presented actually Friday, and then I confirmed that, I think yesterday morning, that it was okay to talk about. And I've talked to some of you about it, and it is the property across from the Thai restaurant that starts at Ivy and 2nd. And it's the property that is in the northeast corner of that property.
Between the little bank, that vacant piece between the the vacant bank and the tie dish? Is that
Correct.
that corner?
Christmas tree lot.
No.
No.
It's across the street.
On the tie dish side, there's
No.
that vacant gravel
there is.
between the bank, that corner
Right.
piece between it.
But you mean the
But that's
Christmas
not
lot
it.
side?
Yeah, it's the other
Christmas
side.
Oh,
Other
you are
side
talking
of
about
the
the parking
street.
lot.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It is the other side of the street, and it runs from, I don't know the name of that street.
Juniper.
Juniper, thank you, to Ivy. It's the full block, except for that little parking lot that
Okay.
belongs to the bank, and I forgot the name of the bank.
Wells Fargo.
Thank you, Wells Fargo on the corner. So the footprint of that is 32,647 feet for all of that property. I've talked to the owner, and I have really no idea how this would take shape, except that you've got a great big empty pallet there to do something on. And he did talk about wanting to save that parking lot where the Christmas trees were sold on the corner there, possibility of doing some commercial development of his own. But that would leave 26,000 square feet in those little small houses. There's 3 houses there, small houses. One of the lots is empty. There's 4 lots. One of them's empty. So you got 26,000 square feet to start with. One of the things that does, I think, is get away from this area, this block, and the disruption that might come in this area, and it gets back to, I think, commercial in private hands, and that's something that the agency has said is one of their goals, is to get this back into private hands. The parking, I think, would free up a lot of parking in this area, and it would, there's quite a bit of parking down around that area. You could also look at that project as a phased project, just like you were going to do on Third. There's 26,000 square feet, doesn't mean you got to build it all at once, although, I think there's advantages to doing that if the funding is available. So, I'm sorry I'm throwing this into the mix so late that I just found out about it. And I looked for, as I've told many of you, the path of least resistance. It's hard to find in Canby, but I think this project, or that site, would be the path of least resistance for, at least in terms of development, from what I've seen here.
And please,
Maybe Bev or maybe Renata knows off the top of their head, but I think the transportation plan that we approved calls for vacation of Juniper. And if so, that would also address the drive-through thing, that we could have that as an additional footprint.
Yeah.
That's one, but I think that Matilda told me that one time.
That's ringing a bell.
That Juniper, the traffic engineers don't like T-bones, and that's what we've got there. And so the idea would be that could be vacated, and that could be additional property or used as a right-of-way. The other thing I like about this, Greg, is that it addresses some of the parking problem, and it builds this next to an existing city lot. I liked Brian's idea a lot, but I can just see the businesses in the Andrews Building saying, where are our customers going to park? And I think that here, by pushing it down next to our existing city lot, that it takes care of that question. But I would like staff to take a look at that, on whether Juniper was ever slated for that, because I think it is, and if so, that would change the dimensions of the footprint you're talking about.
Yeah, it would.
To piggyback on that as well, there's still alleyway on the backside, I believe.
There is alleyway on that.
So you still gain that drive up, drop off, look in,
Yeah.
access.
Could I say one more thing? And I'm not sure, well, as you pointed out in your drawing, there is a pole right there on that side of the alley, and I think there may be in the alley behind the property I'm talking about.
There is.
But it's on the other side. And if you look at that, it is transmission poles. Transmission is, it's not service poles. Transmission is a lot more expensive to put underground,
Yeah.
a lot more. So anyway, that's just
Be
something
a
to
cup
think about.
conversation.
Yeah.
It's cups.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it would cost, but I'm pretty sure it's transmission lines and a lot of electricity going to
Yeah, so probably the 57 kV feeder.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not to put too fine a point on it, Jim.
It's
Whatever
more,
that means.
more dangerous. How's that?
Geeky nerd stuff. Yeah, I don't get it either.
What if, and I'm going to steal from Clint, because Clint brought this up just before, because he threw out public-private partnership just before tonight, too, before having this conversation, of doing something with that property owner, and maybe that we build it, we max it out to a third floor, and that becomes residential, it becomes office, I don't know what it would become, but turn that into a...
We couldn't do that. These were zero coupon bonds that we used to buy these with.
Okay.
That is a problem.
And
Yeah.
somebody can explain what that means, but I know it means we're prevented from doing that type of
Commercial
thing. We
building.
couldn't, for example, in the new library, even have a Starbucks come in. It would have to be a nonprofit coming in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't, the new owner wouldn't pay property taxes. That's the reason we got such a low rate, so.
There is nonprofit housing, however. I mean, if you wanted to take a look at something like that, but, no, we
Section
don't.
8, no.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I don't think that's what you're going for there.
No.
I don't think that's what Mr. Parker wanted downtown.
So,
Sorry to.
no, that's, I mean,
I
that's...
think all of this is terrific. I like the brainstorming. I mean, this is the most, one of the most thoughtful discussions I've seen here with all of these ideas coming forward. So I'm sorry to just say we can't, but.
No, that's why we're having
Which
this
sent for
conversation.
Mr. Ellis to jail by doing this.
Well, he's retiring, so he's got some time on his hands.
3 meals a day.
Don't think
For
they'll
me,
save it like
when
that.
I'm looking at this, like, again, I go back to my initial heartburn of second, and the 4 criteria for me were keeping it by the park, decreasing our footprint, decrease operating costs, and open up our core. And my archaic little check sheet, to me, the Davis property meets those 4. The Clint's idea, as well as Greg's idea, they don't meet the park piece for me, and they both do kind of open up the core for commercial development, but those 2 pieces, the park and the core piece, I wouldn't lose sleep over on either one of those ideas if one of those 2 ideas came to be versus the other, we'll call it the Davis property. But, it's a pretty good piece.
And I appreciate that, Brian, that I think all of us are going to need some flexibility. I wanted to salute Tracy first off, who was one of the first to really be able to move into saying that there's a way to configure this, that you could support a civic building. And I really thought that started the ball rolling here on saying, okay, what can we do? How can we compromise to get this going? Because the polarity that we had was getting us nowhere. So I'm grateful that you say that we may not all get everything that we want here, but in order to get something, we, as my dad used to say, there comes a time when we all have to rise above our principles. So.
Well, I don't see we're fudging on principles. I think it's just that, being so far apart, what is that give, and what are those things that, and if we had to give up, still staying with a huge footprint, and we're still dealing with, what will operating costs look like, those things would give me heartburn. When Greg shared with me the option today, my whole piece of looking at Third was being able to see all of Second Avenue being this hub. I think, because I spent the afternoon thinking about what it could be and what the other property owner, property owner over here is talking about doing, I mean, that could really, we close off Juniper, and they still want to keep a piece for their development. There's still a piece next to the theater. There's the piece within the shopping center here that isn't developed. There's still a lot that could be a real, a real spark to creating that development. We're creating some anchorisms, anchors downtown that I think could be built around.
Well, and I'm not sure how much I can talk about this, but there was a developer at the planning department who's talking about downtown housing in that area. And L.C. Cutsford always said that is how the city should grow. It should grow out in that direction towards the fairgrounds. And this would be a good companionate to building more downtown housing in that area. And I think we can still achieve all your goals, Brian, of this really freeing up the second Hawley, third and Hawley area for business. So to me, the idea of being able to get more downtown housing and to be able to offer people within a 2-block radius a shopping center, a movie theater, and a library will just encourage the redevelopment of that area. And we already have a person coming in saying they want to put in a nice development, a 3-story development in that area. So that would just add to that energy there and would free up, depending upon how we structured it, free up additional properties that would go on to the property tax rolls.
Bring up the tax roll piece, and that was something else too that I know that has been conversation for us is, okay, how do we take more off the tax roll, but can we, how do we take some off and put more back on? And that's, either way we look at, whether it's the Davis property, Greg's idea, we're switching. We're taking some off to hopefully put more back on.
More on, yes.
We were running some numbers too in terms of, it was for a different idea that I had shared, but just what does that mean every year in terms of tax revenue? And, one property, I think, but you spread that over a couple of properties, that can be, tens of thousands of dollars yearly that gets funneled back into, not to mention the job, I won't bore us with the gory details, but, so, yeah, I think Greg, it's a pretty neat opportunity.
Yeah, my biggest things were reducing the footprint, consolidating services to therefore consolidate operations costs, freeing up, same thing we've been talking about, freeing up space for businesses. We want to move towards economic development. We need some place for these people to come downtown. Being by the park was something I was hearing quite a bit. So the mayor's proposal of the corner across from the park looked really good. I do see some potential problems with the parking that would have to be addressed. The First and Second Avenue ideas of Clint, I do like. I don't like the location for a couple of reasons, but we did thank you, Ken, for bringing that up with the drive-through piece not being included. But I do like Clint's idea about the second floor management. If we went with the mayor's idea, then that second floor piece could be, like you were saying, shared conference spaces, meeting rooms, places for programming that would also alleviate some of the issue with staffing. You wouldn't have to staff a place all the time. If you weren't having programming, you wouldn't have staff upstairs. So I do like that idea of shared space on the second floor. But some valid points with the housing idea of moving in that direction. Takes it away from the park, which I don't know. I was hearing it a lot, but I don't know really if, in the scheme of things, if there's got to be some give. That might be a piece that could go and not cause too many people with heartburn over it.
Well, I've always liked the park idea as well, but I think tonight when we actually put it on the ground there And I'm thinking if we have 25 cars, 25 patrons at the library, and presumably more, how that's going to impact the neighbors.
Well, yeah.
And it would be great to have an underground
sorry, Clint.
parking, but I think the city did take a look at that a couple of years ago.
years ago, it was.
And it was like $44,000 per
Stall,
spot.
I think,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Todd, it's great having you on the council. Thank
Well,
you.
the plaza idea was interesting for the landscape requirement, but then that reduces this by how many spots? That would be,
Right.
Quite a few.
we would take quite a few spots
It would
off
reduce
in an
parking.
already pinched situation, so.
If I could share a couple things too. Were you? Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
I'll just interrupt you later.
Okay. Well, I think that
how we roll.
our park, our Waite Park is a beautiful park. It's the living room of Canby. But I consider going to the library and going to the park two separate activities. It'd be ideal if you could do them both together, but I don't think it's necessary for us to make that goal. As far as the cons to the park location, in my view, I believe both the current library and that proposed idea is too small of a footprint, in my opinion. There's no room for future growth unless you're going up. And then the parking, I think, is a real issue. And then we don't own the land. And then the other concern I have, which I'm very concerned about, is I believe that if we were to pursue that project, it would devour the budget where we wouldn't be able to restore the city hall, which I believe is the real gem of the downtown. And
Sorry. Oh, here's where I'm going to interrupt you. If we pursue which project? You're talking about the one on Third,
If
or the
we're to-
one that by
no,
the cinema?
if we were to build a three-story
Okay.
by the park,
Thank you.
has a beautiful view, but I'm afraid that if we pursued that project, it would devour the budget and we wouldn't be able to restore this city hall building. And I want to read a definition, and I don't do this with any disrespect. I just think we don't need to lose sight of what urban renewal is. The definition of urban renewal is the rehabilitation of city areas by renovating or replacing dilapidated buildings with new housing, public buildings, parks, roadways, industrial areas, often in accordance with comprehensive plans, also called urban redevelopment. And so I think that the things we're talking about fit that definition in my view. And I think the other thing is that, you know, all the decisions we make involving money are the taxpayers' money. And I believe that we owe it to the citizens to get the maximum return on their investment with the least amount of risk. And so I think that we need not neglect the already treasures that we have, and I view this city hall as a treasure. And I think as we identify good projects and we complete them, I think it's going to create real momentum, just as the First Avenue has. And so I think Brian's plan is an excellent one. I think the plan on Second's an excellent one. I think my plan's an excellent one. I think putting some numbers to these plans would be, I think, really valuable. And taking a look at not only the cost, but just the efficiencies, and taking into account the parking, because I want to see Canby as healthy as possible.
Yeah, and the parking, that was a very good point about down there. We already have a city parking lot where city employees that would be inhabiting the city hall to be parking there instead of on the street and customer parking. I'm not saying the city employees don't already try to get out of the way. I wasn't trying to say that. But it would, if we were over here by the park, it would be, well, let's be honest, it'd be very inconvenient for staff to have to walk from down here by Thriftway, where they're probably parking now, all the way to go to work every morning. Where if it's right there at the cinema parking lot, then it's convenient and there's a lot of parking there.
I'd like to add to Clint with his definition of reading that definition of urban renewal, and you look at Greg's point about the property down here, you've got those older buildings.
Those old
And
homes, yeah.
that would definitely be taken care of, for me, blight. Because you come across that down Ivy and going north, and you take a look, all this area over here has been really nicely done, and it's brand new looking, and then you look to the right, you have to look clear down
You gotta look down to the cinema to
yeah,
find
cinema
something
to
pretty.
see something new, and this would just seem to be, for me, a perfect fit. And, you know, we still have the park if they want to take their kids to the park, but we got plenty of parking around the area. So I think that would,
Yeah.
for me, it strikes a good point.
Yeah, I think Ken's right. I mean, I don't mean to say that somebody's house is run down, but I had a little bit of heartburn with some of our different plans where we were tearing down buildings that I think still had some use in them. You know, I'm not convinced that we can't still squeeze something out of that police station and the planning and development office and that sort of thing. I mean, I just
We've already put a lot of money into the plan.
yeah. So
A lot of that.
if you're to say where can we invest our dollars that does the best in terms of cleaning up, that would be one. And second, I'd like to ask our chair, because he's been observing the quietness of a presiding officer, but you were the one that was big on swings to stacks. So how think you?
I think like everybody else, that's probably the one that bugs me the most, is not having the proximity to the park. My kids are now at an age where they're old enough that it doesn't matter, but I don't know how a lot of the moms in Canby feel. That has been a common recurring theme, the importance of that synergy. Is it a fatal blow to me? No, I wouldn't let that stop chasing that down there. It's just one of those we're all going to have to work for the best. You're usually the one that has the good quotes. I saw one this week. I thought of you, actually. It said the definition of foresight is planting trees that you'll never enjoy the shade of. And so I try to remind myself of this on these projects. That maybe my grandkids,
Well,
enjoy the shade. But
and all of us went to schools that were planned by people before us. And I appreciate your time today, Tim. Tim spent some time listening to my thoughts on this and saved you all a lot of
Oh, thank
time.
you, Tim.
But I appreciate the spirit and the attitude of that. And I don't mean to truncate discussion, but I think Clint said we'd like some numbers. Do we have any other discussion tonight in the absence of having some numbers? And would we be open to having a special URA meeting to expedite this? The one thing I shared with Tim is that the longer we spend on this, the more it's going to cost. And I just hate to see that inflation cost burn up our money. So if there is light at the end of this tunnel, then
yeah, we want to keep moving towards it.
Two things. Three. I agree with we're burning daylight. Clint, question for you. Your proposal here. What did you say that the square footage would be?
Well, in talking with Greg, I believe there's, if you remodel the city hall, I think he said there's approximately 3,000 workable square feet. And then, but we walked it off, and I think it was about 19,000 square feet, my L-shaped building.
And the landscape.
And that's not
Previous.
counting any, any basement or landscaping. And then on the second floor, because you have 3,000 square foot workable, usable space, your need for more space upstairs for the city, it gives you a little bit of a buffer to build it out over a little bit of time. And under that assumption, I think in order to do that plan, you would have to successfully buy Cub in order to get your books in on the side and, or, work with them. They're a wonderful neighbor and want to be good. And is there anything wrong with landscaping on the roof? Because, I mean, it seems like that would be a place you can do some landscaping.
What's that, Todd?
It's expensive.
Is it?
It's
Oh, it's
So
just-
we're looking at
structural.
40,000 square feet on,
Okay.
on
Well,
those two units.
the other thing, and I realize we all have to, there's give and take on all of these, but the last thing I'd like to give up, kind of speaking on behalf of the Main Street program, is trying to preserve First Avenue for commerce, and to have that entire block going down to Ivy as commerce. And I still think that there's plenty of years left in the Cub building. If they want to sell that or rent it or whatever, I see that as still being a viable commercial site.
Right.
Oliver's are there and the police station. So that's the one thing I twinged about when I saw you do your thing. I think it was a very clever way of turning the Tetris block.
I like the corner door too, that's.
But I would not like to easily give up the idea of at least having on First Avenue from Ivy to Elm be all commerce and all return to private, on the private tax rolls, if possible.
Do we want to maybe get our library supervisors here and jotting notes feverishly? We want to give her an opportunity to.
Yeah, our work session policy says we can pick on staff, so with your grand boss's indulgence, thoughts, Melissa?
Yeah, I have one number of thoughts. I really appreciate all of the thoughts and good work that you all have put into these plans. I think, we can make any plan work at this point. One thing that I really like about a number of the plans is, I guess all of these plans, we would get to stay in the current library building, which would save a lot of money. And would cut down on a lot of stress and worry on behalf of staff. So I think that's a good thing for us. The second floor issue, I think we could work around that if we have a second floor. I really like the ideas that Clint put forth about sharing that space, maybe with the city offices and having some shared meeting room space. That would definitely be a way to increase our square footage, but not have to staff a second floor. So I really like that.